Serious, what is your spookiest or most unexplainable event that has ever happened to you? Phantom whistling that followed a tune that me, my brother and my sister were singing, green sleeves, very random LOL, while doing dishes in the kitchen one summer. The whistle continued the tune for about 5 seconds after we finished singing, and it just dissipated. My sister and I can't whistle, and we were all staring at each other while the whistling occurred. My brother and sister immediately checked outside for a passerby. We live in the country, no neighbors, and if there was someone there they would have seen them for sure. Not to mention the whistle was right in the kitchen with us, while I covered my ears and started having a panic attack from fear LOL. They checked inside the house for someone too. We couldn't explain it, and still talk about to this day. My parents still live there and continue to have odd experiences, but nothing to that level. Edit to add, we also tried singing in the same spots again to see if there was maybe just an echo, but there was none. Was camping with my wife sitting around the campfire. Started to pour rain, so we went back inside the tent. Inside the tent the rain was so heavy we couldn't hear anything over the pitter-patter hitting the tent. We decide to change our clothes and call it a night. We get into our sleeping bags and turn out the light and hear bleat bleat bleat. Again. Bleat bleat bleat. Like the sound Motorola phone would make when the battery was dying. Only thing was we don't have phones that make that sound and our phones are turned off. Miles from anyone. Pouring rain. Can't hear if someone is walking up to your tent. Can't tell if someone walked away from your tent. We were trapped inside this canvas death trap with only one exit. We froze and waited for what seemed like hours. Eventually I grabbed my gun and light and made a dash for the door, trying to get out as fast as I could. Once out I ran around my tent. Nothing. No one. Not a sign of life anywhere. We grabbed our valuables and decided to make the 10-minute trek to our car. We made it safe. Drove an hour home. And slept better than we would have if we stayed. The next day we drove back to get our stuff. When we got to our tent it didn't look like anything had been messed with. Nothing out of place. Once we got home and unpacked, my wife couldn't find her underwear. None of them. Literally nothing else was missing from our stuff. It was the wildest and creepiest experience of our life. This happened about 12 years ago. I lived on the first floor of a 2-story building which had all kinds of weird, ghosty crap going on. My crazy landlord had bought heaps of random crap at estate sales and such and was hoarding it in the basement. Which I never went in cause it gave me the fucking creeps. I think all the dead people's junk is why the place was haunted as fuck, but this is my best story. I lived here alone for a year before my boyfriend moved in. We had no pets, and no kids. I told him a few stories and he was skeptical, at best. We shared a king bed, but had separate covers. I had recurring nightmares about a boy, maybe 2 years old, blonde bowl-cut hair, denim overalls but no shirt under, and no shoes on him. He would stand on my side of the bed and stare at me, watching me sleep. I'd wake up in a panic and he would vanish. One night, I fell asleep with my feet out of the covers. Boyfriend was sleeping next to me. I feel a very gentle pressure on my left big toe, right where it joins the rest of my foot. I was awake, but absolutely freaked out. It lasted a few minutes and stopped. Eventually I fell back asleep. Over the next month, this happened a few more times. On different feet here and there. I didn't tell my boyfriend, worried he might laugh at me or think I was crazy. Next time it happened, it went on for a good 15 minutes, and I never had the nerve to look down and see WTF was holding my foot. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Hey, please let go of my toe!" And slowly, the pressure left, and I went back to sleep. I sucked up the courage and told my boyfriend the next day. He didn't laugh or call me crazy. He shrugged and said, "Okay, I know about your nightmares and something is going on. Next time it happens, wake me up and I will look down for you." Okay, great. So a week or 2 went by with no foot touching. I hoped it was over. Nope. I felt it again. I tapped my boyfriend and he opened his eyes. He was awake. I said, "Boo, he's got my foot. Look down for me?" Boyfriend nodded, but didn't look down. He just stared at me and whispered back, "I feel him too. And I'm not looking either." From then on, he believed me when crazy shit happened in that apartment. By the way, we've been married 10 years now. I have a similar experience. I was alone in a semi-expensive hotel room somewhere in the Far East. I had gone to bed, fully awake still. Then I began to hear light tapping coming from the door. Tap, tap. It was like someone tapped the door a few times with their finger. I didn't think anything of it. Hotels have all sorts of noises. I remember that it was about 30 seconds between the sequences of few taps. Slowly the tapping started to move from the door towards my bed though. The tapping started to sound like it was coming from the cabinets next to the door. Each tap came a little bit closer. At this point I started to be a little concerned. I turned the lights on and the tapping stopped. Waited a few minutes, decided that it was nothing, and turned the lights off. Even with the lights off though, the room was lit enough that I could see. There was nothing where the tapping had been coming from. The tapping resumed. In about 30-second intervals, tap, tap. Coming closer. Suddenly, the tapping was coming from the bed, right next to my feet. I could feel the tapping this time. It felt and sounded exactly like water was dripping from the roof, dropping on the bed. Tap, tap, tap. This time there were no intervals, it was just ceaseless rhythmic tapping. I was freaking out now. I couldn't figure out anything that caused this. I turned the lights on, I could reach the switch lying in the bed, and something ran away from next to my bed back to the door. There was nothing to be seen, but the footsteps sounded like a child's who was unnaturally fast. The interval between the steps was very short, I'd say about a little longer than that of a rat's, but the weight of the steps was that of a small child. I could hear where it was as it was running, but my eyes saw nothing there. I figured that I won't bother to leave the room, as creepy as it was. I wrote a note on the small notepad hotel rooms often have just in case this thing was worse than I gave it credit for. I don't know if hotel room ghosts have a murderous tendency or not. I kept the lights on for about half an hour and then decided to try to sleep. I turned them off. About 5 minutes later, the tapping resumed on my bed. I turned the lights on, it stopped. Lights off, a few minutes, it resumed the same spot. It was like a clockwork. I repeated this about 5 times or so. I slept the rest of the night lights on. To this day, I have no idea what it could have been. Can't say I believe in ghosts, but that experience at the latest has opened me up to the possibility. Never before or since have I had paranormal experiences like this. Edit. This happened about 6 years ago. This happened to me in the past month. For background, I work in a retirement home doing activities. On this day I was filling in at the healthcare center, which is basically hospice. I was in the day room reading stories with one of the ladies. She suddenly asked me who that woman was, while, to me, looked like she was pointing across the room. I don't know, but I'd be happy to ask her so we can find out. I thought she was talking about one of the CNAs who was sitting across the room. No, the woman right next to you. On your left. There was no one sitting next to me. She continued. She looks just like you, but her hair is longer. She says she doesn't have a name, but she's very nice. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, and I must have been giving her a look. Did I say something wrong? No. Nothing's wrong. I made a quick excuse to leave, and practically ran back to my memory care unit. Now here's what shook me up. I was supposed to be an identical twin, but my twin died while we were still in the womb, leaving only me. This is not information I share with the people I work with. One of the CNAs knew from looking at me that something had happened, and wanted to know what it was. She was equally horrified when I told her the story. Actually, I had something similar happen when I worked in memory care in a retirement home back in high school. one of the old ladies one night as we were finishing up dinner services asked I and the other worker to come with her. She then pointed down the stairs to where the old morgue used to be. The retirement home was in what used to be the old city hospital. She told us that we had forgotten to feed them, pointing to nothing there. It definitely creeped us out. She passed away a few days later. When I was in college, I was walking across campus to my early morning class when this old white man with the bluest eyes I've ever seen stopped me to ask for bus ticket money. Everything went still around us. No sounds, the air felt stiff, and there was literally no one but us outside. This man's eyes were like aquamarine. But the rest of his face? It was like his skin was plastered on. His nose looked stuck on like clay. His cheeks looked like they were barely hanging on to whatever was underneath. He looked truly bizarre. He stops me and compliments my lipstick, and asks if I could help him pay for a bus ticket so he could visit his son. I told him I didn't have cash to help him. He never breaks eye contact and tells me he's a veteran and takes his wallet out to show me his military lapel. When he opens it, I see a wad of cash in there, and he looks at me again and asks if I could help. While all of this was happening, the only thing I felt was that I was in danger. I truly thought I was in the presence of someone evil, even though he didn't say or do anything to provoke the feeling. I ended up reaching in my bag for quarters and gave them to him. He held my hand for what felt like forever and let me go on my merry way. I think about this encounter a lot because it felt like he was pretending to be human. His skin looked like it was made out of wet clay and wrongly placed. His eyes were so blue they looked unnatural. And why ask for money when you had it already?